I had sewn a wedding veil for my daughter when she was just a little girl. But on her wedding day, I discovered my love had no place in that church. What happened next changed everything. Subscribe to hear stories that can't be forgotten. My fingers still bear the marks of needles. They are small scars that tell the story of a lifetime dedicated to fabric and love. For 40 years, I sat in this same straw chair, sewing dresses for brides I barely knew, all the while dreaming of the day I'd sew for my own daughter. The house was always simple. 2 rooms, a worn concrete floor, walls that held the echo of so many conversations and tears. On the kitchen table, the old sewing machine still works like the first day, even with the rough sound it makes when the thread tangles. Beside it, a small wooden box where I keep my treasures, colorful buttons, delicate laces, and the veil I embroidered so long ago. I remember when my daughter was 10 and would run around the house with a white sheet on her head, pretending to be a bride. She'd climb onto a chair, stretch her arms as if holding an imaginary bouquet, and call to me, "Mommy, will you be my maid of honor?" I'd stop sewing, wipe my hands on my apron, and always answer the same way. "Of course, my darling. I always will be." In those days, she'd tell me her dreams. She wanted to be a nurse, to help people, to have a beautiful family. She'd sit on the floor beside my chair and ask me what it was like to be in love, how I knew her father was the right man. I'd smile, even though I knew her father had left us when she was barely 3 years old. I never told her the truth about the loneliness that had accompanied me ever since. Little by little, she grew, and the world outside began to call her. First, it was the school in town, then college, then a job at a big company. Her visits became sparse, her phone calls rare. When she did come, she brought expensive gifts I didn't know how to use, and talked about people I didn't know. Her vocabulary changed, her clothes became elegant, her smile grew polite but distant. Even so, I kept sewing. At night, when the lamplight was all that illuminated my work, I'd take out the veil from the little box and run my fingers over the embroidered flowers. Each stitch was made with the hope that, one day, she would return home not just as a visitor, but as a daughter who remembers where she came from. The phone rang one March morning. Her voice sounded different, more serious. "Mom, I'm getting married in 2 months. The ceremony will be at the downtown church." My heart leaped. It was the news I had waited decades for. "Do you need anything, my darling? I can sew your dress or help with the preparations." She laughed, but it was a laugh without joy. "Don't worry, Mom. Everything's already taken care of. I'll send you the details later." I hung up the phone and hugged the little box to my chest. The moment had finally arrived. The veil I had embroidered with so much love would have its purpose fulfilled. 3 weeks before the wedding, I decided to go into the city to visit her. I took the early morning bus, bringing the little box with me and a corn cake that had always been her favorite dessert. The address she gave me was in a neighborhood I didn't know, full of tall buildings and shiny cars. When I rang the doorbell, a young woman answered, blonde, dressed in clothes I only saw in magazines. She looked me up and down with an expression I couldn't decipher. "Who are you?" she asked without inviting me in. "I'm the bride's mother," I replied, trying to smile. She didn't tell me she was expecting visitors today. My daughter appeared behind her, and for a moment I thought I wouldn't recognize her. Her hair was different, her posture had changed. Even her voice seemed deeper. "Mom, what are you doing here?" It wasn't an affectionate question. It was almost an accusation. "I came to see you, my darling." And I brought a surprise. I held up the little box, but she didn't even look. "Come in quickly," she said, glancing around as if someone might see us. The house was large, filled with expensive furniture and shiny objects. Everything was very clean, very organized, very cold. It didn't look like a place where someone lived, but rather where someone posed for photographs. "Mom, you can't just show up without calling. I'm very busy with wedding preparations. There are vendors coming, there are meetings." Her voice was impatient, as if I were a stubborn child. "I thought you'd be happy to see me," I murmured, feeling the words tangle in my throat. The blonde woman introduced herself as the event planner and stood there, observing us with blatant curiosity. My daughter led me to the living room and asked me to sit, but she remained standing, her arms crossed. "What's in the box, Mom?" I opened it carefully, like someone handling something sacred. The veil emerged like a white cloud, delicate, filled with hand-embroidered wildflowers, the same ones she used to pick when she was little. "I sewed this for you when you were still a girl," I said, unfolding the fabric. "I always dreamed of seeing you wear it on your wedding day." The silence that followed was deafening. She touched the veil briefly, like someone testing the temperature of something hot, and quickly withdrew her hands. "Mom, it's very beautiful, but—" She paused, looked at the planner, then at me. "It's just that I already have a veil. It's imported. It matches the dress, the style of the ceremony. You know how it is." "No, I didn't know how it was. All I knew was how to sew love into every stitch, how to daydream about her smile, how to keep hopes in an old wooden box." The planner commented something about visual concept and aesthetic harmony, words that sounded like a foreign language to me. "You can keep it as a memento," my daughter said, placing the veil back in the box without the same care I had used to take it out. "It's important to maintain family traditions." But in that moment, I realized I was no longer part of the family she was building. "Mom, we need to talk about the wedding." The sentence came out heavy, loaded with something I still couldn't name. She finally sat down, but on the edge of the armchair, as if ready to leave at any moment. Her eyes avoided mine, fixing now on the floor, now on the window, now on any place but my face. "Of course, my darling. I wanted to know how I can help. I can bake some cookies, or perhaps sew something for the bridesmaids." I had barely finished the sentence when I saw her expression contort, as if I had suggested something absurd. "The thing is, the wedding is going to be, how can I explain it? A sophisticated event. There will be businessmen, politicians, important people from society." She paused, took a deep breath. "The venue is very elegant, you know? The most traditional church in town, followed by a reception at a 5-star hotel." I felt a strange pang in my chest, something more than just curiosity. "And what does that have to do with me, honey?" The advisor cleared her throat from where she stood and stepped closer. "What she's trying to say is that there's a specific code of conduct for events like these. Dress code, etiquette, protocol." Her voice was polite, but sharp. "These aren't events for just anyone. Just anyone." The words echoed in my head like a punch. I looked at my daughter, expecting her to defend me, to say I wasn't just anyone, that I was her mother. But she just gave a barely perceptible nod. "Mom, you understand, right? It's just that people will be watching everything. His family is traditional. They have a name in society. I need to make a good impression." Her words tumbled out, as if she wanted to get rid of them quickly. "Wouldn't you feel out of place in an environment like that?" Out of place. The word burned like hot iron. "Honey, I'm your mother. I raised you alone. I worked day and night so you could study. You never lacked anything." My voice trembled and I fought to keep it steady. How could I feel out of place at my own daughter's wedding? She sighed, got up from the armchair and went to the window. "Mom, you're not getting it. People will ask questions. They'll want to know about our family, our history. It's complicated. Complicated. Our history was complicated. The nights I spent awake when she had a fever were complicated. The worn-out shoes I wore for years so she could have new ones were complicated. The love I poured over her every day of her life was complicated." "What do you mean, my daughter?" I asked, though I already knew I didn't want to hear the answer. "You mean maybe it's better if you don't come to the wedding?" The words came out as a whisper, but they were like a scream in my ears. "It's temporary, Mom. After things calm down, after I settle into the new social circle, we'll see each other more." The little box slipped from my hands and fell to the floor with a dull thud. The veil I had embroidered with so much love spread out on the expensive carpet, like a cloud dissolving in the sky. And that's exactly how I felt. Dissolving. I left her house that day, carrying the box as if I were carrying my own broken heart. On the bus ride back, her words echoed non-stop, complicated, out of place, temporary. Each one dug deeper, leaving scars that I knew would take time to heal. In the weeks that followed, I tried to understand what had happened. I reread the letters she sent me from college, looking for clues as to when exactly I had become a problem in her life. The letters were affectionate, full of "miss you" and "love you, Mom." At what point did those words become polite lies? One afternoon, my neighbor came over for coffee. She knew about the wedding. I had told the whole neighborhood proudly, showing her the photos my daughter had sent me of the preparations. "So how are the final preparations going? You must be nervous, right?" she asked, stirring sugar into her coffee. I couldn't lie. The words stumbled out, mixed with tears I tried to hold back. "She doesn't want me to go to the wedding. She said I wouldn't fit in." The neighbor was silent for a moment, then shook her head sadly. "My dear, sometimes children get lost when they climb the ladder in life. They forget that we're proud to be simple, to have worked honestly to raise them." She took my hand. "But deep down, she knows who you are. She's just confused right now." I wanted to believe those words, but it was hard when the evidence said otherwise. 2 days later, walking downtown to buy sewing thread, I saw my daughter in an expensive store, trying on shoes. She was with 2 elegant women who were laughing loudly and talking about the wedding. I stood on the other side of the street, watching. One of the women asked something about her family, and my daughter replied, "My mother died when I was little. I was raised by my aunt, but she lives abroad now." The words hit me like lightning. I was alive, I was there, just a few feet away, but to her I had died. I stumbled home, as if I had been hit on the head. I sat down at my sewing machine and opened the box. The veil was there, untouched, waiting for a day that would never come. Beside it, I found an old photograph. The 2 of us when she was 5, at her birthday. She was sitting on my lap, smiling at the camera, and I was kissing her cheek. In that photo, we were happy. We were a family. I existed. I grabbed paper and pen and started writing a letter to her. I wanted to remind her of who we were, where we came from, everything we had been through together. But the words wouldn't come. How do you explain to someone who prefers to pretend you're dead that you're still alive? How do you remind someone of their own history when they've chosen to rewrite it without you? I tore up the letter before finishing it. If she wanted a world without me, I had to learn to live in a world without her. But the veil remained in the box, waiting. Because deep down I still had hope. Memory has its cruel ways. The more you try to forget it, the clearer it becomes. I spent the following nights recalling every detail of our life together, as if my heart were trying to prove to myself that it had all been real. I remembered the day she came home from school crying because the other kids had laughed at her lunch. It was just a bologna sandwich wrapped in wax paper, not a colorful lunchbox like the others had. That night, I sewed a small bag for her to carry her lunch, decorated with fabric flowers. "Now you have the most special lunchbox at school," I said. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you, Mommy. You always know how to make me happy." I remembered the times she got sick and I stayed up all night by her bedside, changing cold compresses, making herbal tea, singing the songs my own mother used to sing to me. On one of those nights, when she was about 8, she took my hand and said, "Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to take care of you just like you take care of me." I promise. Where were those promises now? Where was the girl who hugged me during storms, who asked me to tell her bedtime stories, who drew hearts on paper and wrote, "To the best mom in the world"? One morning, while sewing a dress for a client, I found a forgotten letter among the fabrics. It was from when she was in college and living in the boarding house in town. I reread it now, and the words cut me like a razor. "Dearest Mom, you can't imagine how much I miss you. Yesterday at the college cafeteria, I had some cornbread, and I cried because it reminded me of yours. No cornbread in the world will ever be like yours. I'm studying a lot. But sometimes I get sad and just want to come home, sit in the kitchen with you, and listen to your stories while you sew. The girls here think it's funny when I tell them my mom makes the prettiest dresses in the whole county. They don't know you have magic hands. I love you so much. Your daughter who will never forget you. Never forget me. The words stung more than a needle prick. She hadn't forgotten me. She'd chosen to erase me. That afternoon, I had an unexpected visitor. It was my daughter's old elementary school teacher, Mrs. Gable, a silver-haired lady who had always had a special fondness for her. I came by because I heard about the wedding. How wonderful, isn't it? You must be thrilled. I couldn't pretend everything was okay anymore. I told Mrs. Gable what had happened, the words tumbling out between sobs I could no longer control. She listened in silence, shaking her head with a deep sadness in her eyes. You know what I remember most about that little girl? She said after a while. It was an essay she wrote about heroes. All the other kids wrote about superheroes, firefighters, doctors. She wrote about you. She said you were the bravest person she knew because you raised her alone and still managed to smile every day. Miss Gable held my hands, already marked by years of sewing. That girl hasn't changed inside. She's lost, that's all. But the love you two built doesn't just disappear. I wanted to believe her. But how could I trust love when it was the very thing rejecting me? 2 weeks before the wedding, fate intervened in a way I could never have imagined. I was at the downtown farmers market, picking up some new thread, when I bumped into a familiar face, my daughter's former employer, Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman for whom she'd worked as a secretary right after graduating. How's life treating you? And your daughter? How is she? Mrs. Henderson asked with her usual kind smile. I hesitated, unsure of what to say. She's getting married soon, I replied, trying to sound happy. How marvelous. She was always such a special girl. I remember when she worked for me, she talked about you all the time. She said you were the strongest woman she knew, that she wanted to make you proud. Mrs. Henderson paused, studying me intently. By the way, you must be so proud of her success. I heard she landed that job at the big company through a recommendation from me. My heart stopped. Recommendation? Yes, dear. She came to me about 3 years ago, said she urgently needed references to get the position. I personally put in a good word for her with the director. He's been a family friend for years. It was through my name that she got the role. Mrs. Henderson smiled, proud. Of course, she earned it, but you know how it is. Sometimes you just need a door opened. The world spun around me. Everything started to make sense. The sudden change in her life, the expensive apartment, the designer clothes, the wealthy fiancé. My daughter hadn't just made it on her own merit, as she always told me. She had used connections, lied about our reality, taken advantage of the kindness of people like Mrs. Henderson. Did she say anything about her family when she asked for the recommendation? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mrs. Henderson looked confused. That's strange you ask. She said she came from a humble family, that her mother had made many sacrifices to educate her, that she wanted to repay you by giving you both a better life. The woman paused, observing me more closely. Why did something happen? I couldn't answer. Tears streamed down my face, right there in the middle of the market. Mrs. Henderson led me to a nearby bench and waited for me to calm down. When I could finally speak, I told her everything. The rejection, the lies, the wedding I was excluded from. Mrs. Henderson's expression changed completely. Her kindness turned to indignation. This is unacceptable. After everything you did for her, after everything she told me about your love and dedication, how could she do this to you? She's ashamed of me, I murmured, the truth hurting even more when spoken aloud. She's not ashamed of you, Mrs. Henderson said firmly. She's afraid they'll find out she wasn't born into the golden cradle she's pretending to inhabit now. But that doesn't justify what she's doing. At that moment, Mrs. Henderson made a decision that would change everything. I'm going to the wedding. I was invited by the groom's family. We've known each other for decades. and I will make sure to ask about you, to make it clear who the bride's mother is." I tried to dissuade her, but she was resolute. "My dear, some truths need to come to light, and your daughter needs to learn that you can't build a future by denying your past." The revelation had shaken me, but it also ignited something within me. It wasn't just hurt I felt now. It was indignation. I went home that day with a storm brewing inside me. Mrs. Henderson's words echoed in my head, mixed with all the lies my daughter had told me over the years. I got the job through my own hard work. People respect me for who I am. I worked hard to get where I am. All baloney. All built on a recommendation obtained by pretending to be someone she wasn't. But what hurt the most weren't the lies to get the job. It was that she had lied to me. It was that she had looked me in the eye, accepted my congratulations for her own merit, let me be proud of an achievement that never existed the way she told me. I stayed up all night, pacing the small house that suddenly felt tiny compared to the magnitude of her lies. In the early morning, I made a decision. I would go see her one last time. I needed to hear the truth from her own mouth, no matter how painful. I arrived at her house unannounced, just like the first time. But this time, I didn't bring the little box with the veil. I only brought my broken heart and a lot of questions. The event planner greeted me with the same sour look as always, but when I said I needed to speak with my daughter urgently, she eventually let me in. My daughter came down the stairs wearing an expensive robe, her hair pulled back, and a face mask on. She looked like an actress preparing for a role. Perhaps that's exactly what she had become, an actress playing a character who wasn't her. "Mom, what are you doing here again?" "I told you I was busy with the preparations." The irritation in her voice was palpable. "I met Mrs. Helena yesterday," I said, cutting straight to the chase. I saw the color drain from her face, even under her mask. She told me an interesting story about a job recommendation. The silence that followed was heavy as lead. She slowly pulled down her mask, revealing an expression I'd never seen before. Pure fear. "Mom, I can explain." "Then explain." My voice came out firmer than I expected. "Explain how you lied to me for 3 years. Explain how you used the name of a kind woman to get a life that wasn't yours by right. Explain how you made me believe you'd made it on your own, when in reality—" "Enough!" she yelled. And for the first time in years, I saw the daughter I knew beneath all that pretense. "You don't understand anything. You don't know what it's like to live in this world, to have to compete with people who were born with everything. And you think lying about who you are, lying about me, is the solution." "Lying about me?" She laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Mom, don't you get it? I didn't lie about you. I lied about myself. I pretended I came from a different family because no one would take me seriously, knowing I'm the daughter of a seamstress from the sticks." The words hit me like slaps. "So you're ashamed of me?" "I'm ashamed of poverty," she exploded. "I'm ashamed of growing up in hand-me-downs, of bringing my lunch to school in a margarine tub, of you having to sew until dawn to pay for my things." "And I'm proud of all of that," I replied, feeling hot tears stream down my face. "Proud of every night I stayed up for you, of every outfit I altered to fit you, of every sacrifice I made with love." She turned her back to me. "You don't get it. In this world, where you come from matters, and I couldn't carry our origins forever." In that moment, I understood I had lost my daughter forever. Not to death, not to distance. I had lost her to the shame she felt for her own roots. The wedding day arrived like a predicted storm. I woke up early, even though I knew I had nowhere to go, nothing to do. It was Saturday, and the whole neighborhood seemed to know it was my daughter's big day. My neighbor brought me breakfast. The lady at the corner store asked if I'd be on time for the ceremony. I just smiled and lied. Of course, it's my daughter's wedding. Around noon, I got dressed. I put on my best dress, a navy blue I'd sewn myself for neighborhood weddings, carefully styled my hair, and picked up the small box with the veil. I wasn't going to the wedding, but I felt I needed to be ready, as if it were a matter of honor. I was sitting on the porch, watching the hours tick by, when a car pulled up in front of my house. It was Mrs. Helena, dressed elegantly for the wedding, but with a determined look on her face. "I've come to pick you up," she said as she got out of the car. "You're going to your daughter's wedding, whether she likes it or not." "Mrs. Helena, I can't. She made it clear that—" "My dear, some things in life are bigger than bruised pride or misplaced shame. You are the mother of the bride. You have a right to be there." She took my hand. "And more than that, you have an obligation to be there, to show her and the world that true love doesn't abandon, even when it's rejected." I hesitated, but Mrs. Helena was firm. "Besides, I have some information that might interest you. I found out a few things about this wealthy family she's marrying into, things she ought to know." In the car on the way to the church, Mrs. Helena told me what she'd discovered. The groom's family wasn't as traditional as they appeared. His father had been arrested for tax evasion years ago. The family business was in financial trouble, and the groom himself had a history of relationships ending violently. They're interested in her job, in the stability she represents. It's a marriage of convenience for both sides. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because your daughter may be lost, but she's still your daughter. And sometimes, when people are about to make a big mistake, they need to hear the voice of someone who truly loves them." We arrived at the church after the ceremony had already begun. It was an imposing temple, with marble columns and stained glass windows that made light dance on the altar. The pews were packed with elegantly dressed people, all looking as if they were at a fashion show. I could see my daughter at the altar, radiant in a dress that cost more than I'd earned in a year. We stayed at the back of the church discreetly, but when the priest asked if anyone objected to the marriage, Mrs. Helena stood up. "Father, I would like to speak with the bride before she makes this decision." A murmur ran through the church. My daughter saw me for the first time, and her face went ashen. The groom looked annoyed. His parents whispered to each other with grim expressions. But Mrs. Helena walked to the altar with the authority of someone who had the moral standing to speak. "My dear," she said, looking directly at my daughter, "there are things you need to know about this family, and there is one person here you have treated unfairly." She turned to me. "Your mother deserves to be here at this moment. She's the one who gave you everything you need to be here today." It was then that I saw other people standing up. Mrs. Rosa, her old teacher. Mr. Joachim, the owner of the stationery store where my daughter bought notebooks as a child. The owner of the boarding house where she lived in college. One by one, the people who truly knew her began to speak, sharing stories about the hard-working, studious girl who spoke of her mother with love and admiration. "She always said she wanted to make her mother proud," said the boarding house owner, "that you were her role model for strength. Whenever she made a little extra money, she'd send it to you," Mr. Joachim recalled. "She said you deserved good things." One by one, voices rose, piecing together the true story of my daughter. Not the fabricated version she told her new friends, but the reality of a girl who loved her mother and dreamed of repaying all the love she had received. The silence in the church was deafening. My daughter stood at the altar caught between two worlds, the real one, represented by the people who stood up to speak, and the false one, symbolized by the groom, who looked at her with growing discomfort, and his family, who were whispering mean comments about the scene being made. It was then that she did something I never expected. She stepped down from the altar. Slowly, as if each step weighed a ton, she walked down the aisle until she reached me. Her wedding dress trailed on the marble floor, making a soft sound that echoed in the absolute silence. When she got close, she stopped. Her eyes were brimming with tears, and for a moment I saw her again. The little girl who'd run to me with scraped knees, who'd sought my lap during nightmares. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling just like it used to. "I'm so sorry." I couldn't speak. The words caught in my throat, tangled with years of hurt, hope, love, and disappointment. I just opened my arms, and she collapsed into them like she did as a child, sobbing against my chest. "I'm lost, Mom, I'm so lost," she cried, and I felt her tears soaking into my navy blue dress. I thought if I pretended to be someone else, if I hid where I came from, I'd be happy. But I'm empty inside. The groom approached, clearly annoyed. What is this? Let's just get this ceremony over with. But as he got closer, my daughter turned to him with a resolve I hadn't seen in years. There's not going to be a ceremony, she said, pulling the ring from her finger and handing it to him. I can't get married pretending to be someone I'm not, and I can't build a life denying who helped me get here. The young man flew into a rage, yelling about the money spent, the humiliation, the lawsuits. But my daughter wasn't listening anymore. She turned back to me. Mom, did you bring the veil? She asked, and for the first time in years, her voice held the sweetness of her childhood. With trembling hands, I opened the small box I'd carried for so long. The veil emerged like a cloud of hope, delicate, filled with the embroidery that told our story. She took it with reverence, her fingers tracing the embroidered flowers, the same ones she used to pick in the yard when she was little. This veil tells our true story, she said aloud so everyone could hear. It was made by a woman who gave up everything for love, a woman who worked until her hands bled to give me an education, a woman who never asked for anything in return, only that I be happy. She looked me in the eye, and I can only be happy if I'm true to myself. She placed the veil on her head right then and there, in the middle of the chaos, in the middle of the scandal. And in that moment she was more beautiful than in any designer dress, because she was finally being herself. Can we go home, Mom? She asked, taking my arm. We walked out of the church together, leaving behind the uproar, the shouting, the world of appearances. And for the first time in years, I felt like I had my daughter back. Today, 6 months after that day in the church, I'm writing these words sitting in the same wicker chair where I've spent my life sewing. But I'm not alone anymore. My daughter is in the kitchen, making the cornbread she'd forgotten how to bake, asking every 5 minutes if the proportions are right. She came home that afternoon and hasn't left. She lost her job at the big firm. After all, Mrs. Helena's recommendation only worked as long as she kept up the charade. She lost the fancy apartment, the imported car, the designer clothes. But she regained something far more valuable. She regained herself. It was hard at first. She cried a lot, regretting the choices she'd made, the time we'd lost, the lies she'd told. How can you forgive me, Mom? After everything I did, how do you still love me? She'd ask in the early mornings when she couldn't sleep. Because that's what a mother's love is like, I'd reply. It doesn't disappear when we disappoint. It waits. It forgives. It welcomes you back. She found a job at a neighborhood school teaching children. She earns much less than she did at the firm, but she comes home with shining eyes, telling stories about the kids, making plans to improve their education. She's dating the math teacher, a simple, honest young man who knows our whole story and loves us exactly as we are. The embroidered veil is back in its box now, but not with sadness. It's waiting for the right day, for true love, for a wedding that will be celebrated with people who truly matter. And I know that day will come, because now she understands the difference between pretending to be happy and being truly happy. Sometimes when I'm sewing, she sits on the floor beside my chair, like she used to when she was little. We sit and talk about life, about dreams, about new beginnings. Mom, she said the other day, do you think people will judge me for coming back home? My darling, I replied, running my hand through her hair, the people who matter will admire you for the courage to admit you were wrong and return to what truly matters. And those who judge you are the same ones who live trapped in gilded cages, pretending to be happy. I've learned that there's no such thing as love that's too small or too big. There's true love and pretend love. Mine was always true, which is why it withstood rejection, hurt, and distance. And hers was true deep down, too, just buried under so much fear and pressure to be someone she wasn't. Life has taught me that our roots are our most precious treasure. We can try to cut them, deny them, hide them, but they'll always be there, sustaining us, defining us, reminding us of who we truly are. My daughter tried to become a different tree. but her roots were always the same. The love, the simplicity, the truth I planted in her heart from a young age. Today, when I see her helping a struggling child at school, or when I see her genuinely smiling as she prepares dinner, I know it was worth the wait. It was worth forgiving. It was worth believing that true love always finds a way back home. The veil is still there in the box, waiting. But now I know that when she wears it, it will be with pride for the hands that embroidered it, for the story it represents, for the love each stitch carries. Because in the end, we're only truly happy when we stop pretending to be someone we are not and embrace, with all our imperfections and all our beauty, who we really are. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and share so more people can hear what should never be forgotten. A mother's love is like that. It forgives, it waits, and it always welcomes you back. What similar story have you lived or do you know? Comment below and help keep alive the memories that deserve to be remembered.